Okay, so we're going to be discussing about the last two topics or the last two civilizations for the development of science and technology during the ancient times. That is the Chinese and the Mesoamerican. Okay, so let's just start my PowerPoint. Okay, so in the ancient Chinese civilization, there are a lot of, there are a lot of contributions, and there are a lot of things that usually comes into our mind when we mention uh, Chinese culture or Chinese civilization in our times. Now, isa-isahin natin 'yan kasi sobrang dami nila. So, if you talk about astronomy, so in ancient time, no, it was believed that what is seen directly on the heavens is a reflection of what is about to happen on the earth. Okay, so for example, if there's a comet that's about to fall, if they see a comet, so it's a sign that something great is going to happen. Although we know now in the modern times that the comet is actually something that's coming on a regular basis. Okay? Now, ano-ano yung mga kinontribute nila pagdating sa astronomy? So, the Chinese actually use a luni-solar calendar um, that actually captures the cycle of the sun and the moon. Okay. And although it's something that is not the same, but it can be calculated. Okay. And at the same time, they believe in solar and moon eclipses. Okay. They were able to predict solar eclipses, lunar eclipses through the astronomer Shi Shen. Okay. That was in the 4th century BCE. Okay. Now, because of this, it was believed that they see that the arrangement between the sun, the moon, and the sun, and they believe that the sun is the center of the universe. Then they also believed in the Chinese constellation and the different mansions. They also believe that for each time there is specific animals that would represent it. So an example for this one is the four corners of the earth. Yung earth north, east, north, south, west, and east, or east and west, di ba? So for the north, it is represented by the black tortoise. Then the east is by the azure dragon or the water dragon. Ito is earth turtle. Then you have the vermilion bird or yung mismong phoenix, okay, of the south. And then you have the white tiger of the west, okay? So they believe that, and then at the same time, di ba, you will know that there are the different zodiacs, the 12 zodiacs. Actually, hindi lang siya 12, it's actually 12 times 15. Bakit 12 times 15 ba 12 times 6? Basta all in all, 12 times 5. There are 5 elements, di ba? We have the metal, the water, the air, and the different zodiacs or ano ito, yung mismong pinagse-celebrate natin 'pag Chinese New Year, right? It usually happens every 60 years na uulit yung water dragon, kasi may fire dragon tayo, may metal dragon, may earth dragon, may air dragon. So 'yan, so lahat 'yoon. It's actually ingrained in all of the societies right now. Now, in terms of medicine, it's not actually medicine per se. It's more of Chinese alchemy. That's why they call it as an alchemy because it's considered as not true science. And they actually believe in the idea that to turn everything into gold. If you watch is anybody here familiar with the animation Full Metal Alchemist? Meron ba ditong familiar dun sa Full Metal Alchemist? Yung sinasabi nila sa equivalent exchange, wala?
Wala po, ma'am.
Wala, ano ba yan? Okay, ano yung idea nila sa alchemist? They believe that anything can be changed into gold and immortality can be delivered. So usually, dun sa animation, yung nasabi nila is that there is always equivalent exchange and then they can have eternal life. Now you will notice that because of this idea, somehow they have a lot of things in terms of medicine and ways on keeping body healthy. So we have what we call the outer alchemy or the Waidan. Okay. And the inner alchemy called the Neidan. So yung outer alchemy, ito yung mga medicines na na-apply nila sa katawan nila, and then any ways on how to make themselves healthy. While for the inner alchemy, that's why some Chinese believe in meditation, yung ano self healing, yung peaceful, tatahimik ka lang diyan, then you allow your body to heal on itself. So yun, they believe in that one as well. And they believe in the inner alchemy. It's made out actually of three. So you have their Jing, which is the life essence, yung life. Then Qi, yan. So yung mga ano, yung energy forces sa katawan natin is called the chi. Then you have the shen, ito yung ano, mind. Okay? And then in terms of medicine, marami po silang kinontribute. Unang-una yung acupuncture. Yung acupuncture is utilizing, hindi yung pangtahi na karayom ha. They have a particular acupuncture needle. They apply it in acupoints. Actually, ano to yun yung mga lymphatic system. Actually yun. They place it there para daw mag-absorb ng chi dun sa part na yun. Kaya ka nagkakasakit kasi mahina yung part mo na yun, hindi ka nakaka-absorb ng chi. Okay? And then they also believe in female health. When say female health, including dito yung pregnancy, before and after. Kasi during the ancient times, yung mga Western people have low birth weights. Kasi nga po, hindi nila ina-apply yung mga tamang paraan pag nagbubuntis, 'pag nagpapaanak, alam lang nila 'pag nanganak bukaka, ire, labas, yun na. Samantalang sa kanila, may mga proseso, you need to make sure na malinis yung paligid, tapos lalagyan mo sa malinis na tela, hindi basta-basta kung saan-saan mo na nilalagay yung bata, 'yan. Kaya mataas din ang birth rate din nila. And then at the same time, they have also diagnostics. Now, when you say diagnostics, this is actually how they were able to see if a person has sickness. So, kasama diyan yung inspection, 'di ba 'pag ini-inspect tingnan natin baka may 'pag tinignan ka ng doktor titingnan yung mukha mo or sabihin mo dun sa doktor na masakit yung braso mo, titignan ni doktor kung saan yung masakit at tapos usually kasama diyan yung pag-i-inquire, tatanungin ka, "O kailan nagsimula ito?" So, actually those are the things that are already being done right now by modern doctors. Then kasama po yung sa kanila, you have auscultation. And then auscultation is listening to the sounds while wheezing. Yan yung pinakikinggan. So, meron silang tubo na ilalagay sa dibdib mo, then pakikinggan nila. So, this is actually giving rise to the modern stethoscope. Okay? Olfaction, inaamoy ka. Mamaya dyan, yung paa mo pala, kaya masakit ang paa mo dahil sa sobra ng, ano tawag nito? Matindi na yung ano mo, sakit sa ano tawag to? Yung foot, ano mo, yung baho ng paa mo. Something like that. And then palpitation, yung say palpitation naman, yung sa pulso, pinag-aaralan nila. So if in case you're watching mga Korean telenovela, Japanese and also ano, if they're referring to traditional Chinese medicine or TCM, importante sa kanila, pinupulsahan nila yung patient nila. So, dun sa Chinese medicine guys, kahit na buntis, kahit hindi sabihin na buntis ka, they can actually feel it on the pulse rate. So usually it's something to about the number of beats per second, per minute. Siguro napapansin nila nagdo-double beat yung pulso mo kasi nga buntis ka. Yan. Then they also have herbal medicine. Okay? So usually they have different medications. So example, so yung nilagay ko dyan, yung mga seahorse. Yan, kasama po yan. Then they have also here mga ano to, parang ano 'to, yung parang scorpion 'yan, kasama 'yan, pinapainom 'yan sa mga medicine. Then they also have tuina, so dito yung ano, this is the modern massage that we have. So usually, an example of this one is shiatsu, so pinipress-press yung katawan para, kahit na nakadamit 'yan, pinipress lang naman yung labas para ma-release yung stress, okay? Or by, rubbing that particular area, and usually sinasamahan ng stretching. Then you have also Qigong. Itong nasa taas na picture ko is Qigong. Okay, so if you will notice, this is similar to ito masasabi niyo siguro Tai Chi. Now, nung chineck ko yung difference nun, magkaiba po yung Qigong and Tai Chi. Yung Qigong po is yung exercise, yung mga ginagawa ng mga matatanda, yung bigla nilang nag-stretch ng ganyan, tapos naggaganon ng kamay nila, that is Qigong. Pero once na inano nila yon, tapos nakakasampal na sila ng katabi nila, pag ganun nila, nahahawi na nila yung kalaban nila, that's Tai Chi. Okay? So, magkaiba yung dalawang yon. So, Tai Chi is actually, tawag doon, parang they tend to pinagpapalit nila yung dalawang yon. So, it's actually Qigong, yung mismo basic movements na yon. Okay? Then you have also Gua Sha. Okay? Ito, mamaya yan. So, yung Gua Sha. Gua Sha is called, yung mismong pinapalo yung balat hanggang gamit ng hindi naman dos por dos. Ginagamitan ka lang naman ng stick ng kahoy or jade or animal bone, papaluin yung likod mo hanggang sa magkaroon ka ng welt or pasa. Yan. Okay, so sabihin nyo baka cruelty to animals to or cruelty to humans. Okay, yan. So that's actually going to help them heal. Yan ang kanila. Then you have also here what we call the cupping. So, ito yung mismong bentosa na tinatawag natin sa Spanish. So, they place hot air inside the cup. Pag nilagay sa ibabaw ng balatyan, it tends to suck or have a negative pressure. Hihilain niya yung balat. Kaya hanggang sa magkaroon ng parang pasa. Okay? Hindi, medyo masakit siya kasi bugbog yung balat mo pagkatapos eh. Hindi siya masakit habang nilalagay yung bentosa. Pero masakit na siya 'pag na-release na yun kasi nahila yung balat mo, eh. Then you have also what we call the Dida or Ditda, okay? Yung Dida or Dida is actually considered as the bone setting technique. So usually it's actually done in medicine to treat injuries like bone fractures, sprains, or bruises, okay? This is almost similar to what we call the modern chiropractor. Okay? So for example, merong bali sa likod mo or naipit yung yung gulugod mo sa likod to the point na yung nerves mo na nawala sa pwesto or naipit, causing you loss of sensation a particular part of the body. Yon. So, 'pag pina-chiropractor niyo 'yon, ipe-pression or ayusin yung mga buto ninyo hanggang sa ma-release yung pressure 'yon, okay. So, 'yan. Then you have also kite. So, actually one of the traditional, uh, things that were given to us by the Chinese is the kite. So, this actually started until, from 200 years before Christ. So, this was during the Han Dynasty. And some of records also show that they had this 2000 years before Christ. And if you will notice on the sample picture that I had here, there are different shapes and sizes and designs in their kites as well. Okay? So, yan. Then, in later years, they were able also to incorporate it in their warfare. Okay? Then, they also have what we call clock towers. Yan. But actually, sa India, sa Chinese, sa Persian, they all have clock towers. Kanya-kanyang design lang yon. Then another uh, contribution of China is porcelain. Kaya nga 'di ba, porcelain is almost synonymous to China because they were able to come up with a high grade quality of porcelain. Okay? They were also able to place glaze on top of it. Kaya siya makintab kasi meron siyang glaze. Nilalagyan nila ng silicone solution tapos sa kanila niluluto yon. Kaya nagiging makintab yan. Okay? And another one here is the fan. This actually goes back a long, long time. It can be seen in China, Korea, Japan as well. Now, one of the major products of trade in the ancient times of China is silk. It's actually part of their clothing, and it's predominantly worn by emperors, then higher officials, then later on commoners. Pero usually pag special events, yung mga commoners, they wear silk. Okay? Para to depict parang royalty. This was actually an important part of their economy because they used to trade it with the Western world. Now, how do they do the silk cloth? Yung cloth nag-start yan doon sa silk cocoon. Yung silk cocoon, hindi dapat lumabas yung silk butterfly. So, pagka nag-cocoon na siya, iluluto na kaagad yan. I-unravel nila yung silk thread. Imagine niyo ganyan lang kaliit yung mga silk cocoon niya. 'Pag once na nakalabas na 'yan or once na ni-unravel na nila yung cocoon, it actually can produce ganito kakataba na sinulid. Maganda lang siguro yung pagkakadikit-dikit nung when the silkworm is trying to cocoon itself na medyo napapaliit niya, pero 'pag in-unravel nila makapal malaki-laki yon. Plus the fact na niluto na nila. Now in terms of clothing, 'yan, so yung mga babae sa kanila they use layers of silk or cloth ta's tinatali nila. Here are more examples of clothing. Now if you will notice this might be looking similar to Korean dresses. Yes, that's correct. Later on, yung mga Koreans kumuha na sila ng traditional clothes nila, yung yung mismong damit nila para ma-set aside, set apart sila sa Chinese. Okay? Pero some of the historicals, ganito yung mga lumang-lumang damit sa Korea din. Then in terms of shoes, ayan, they have the foot binding. This is actually a sign of wealth for them. Kasi nga, pag Chinese ka, tapos naka-foot bind ka, it's you considered as a royalty kasi you have servants to carry you around. Hindi ka naglalakad. Okay? Meron kang tinatawag na parang palangkin. Okay? Palangkin yung mga may tao na parang karitela. Hindi, walang gulong yan. Tao talaga magbibitbit sa'yo. Nakaupo ka lang doon, tapos bibitbitin ka doon sa lugar na yon. Okay? But right now, it's already banned from them doing it. This grandmother is one of the oldest person who had originally foot binding. So ngayon wala na. Yung mga paa nila malalaki na. Mga size 7, size 10, ganun kalalaki yung mga paa na. Okay. Then another thing that can be seen in terms of architecture is the Great Wall of China. So this is actually a series of stone walls that fortifies their country against invaders. And it was seen 500 years before Christ up to 1600 to protect them from other invaders. Now, hindi po siya isang continuous. Yung iba po dyan is putol-putol. Yung iba po ay hindi na po makita kasi nga natabunan, particularly from the part that is already near Mongolia kasi medyo ano dun eh, Gobi Desert. So natatabunan na ng lupa, ng buhangin. Okay? So usually dependent yan dun sa empire or sa dynasty na in charge na doon. Then you have also another example of the architecture. You have the Temple of Heaven. So this is actually first of the five sacrificial temples in Beijing. So this was built in 1420, along with the establishment of the Forbidden City. Then you have the Ling Yin Temple or the Temple of Inspired Seclusion. Actually, the Buddhism is actually coming from Mahatma Buddha, tama ba? And then this is actually an Indian religion. Yun nga lang inaccept ng todo siya ng Chinese. Okay? Then pagoda is actually an example of an Indian architecture na dinala sa China. Okay? So yan, this was actually one of the things that they were able to adapt from the Indian traders that were going through the Silk Road. Then you have also yin and yang in terms of their religion, 'di ba? Sa Taoism. So they believe that black is the symbol of bad, white is the symbol of good, and inside the good and the bad, there is a part that is the opposite. So kahit na mabuti ka, meron pa rin part sa'yo na masama, at yung masama, meron part pa rin na mabuti. Okay? And if you combine them, it's forming the light. And for the yin, it usually represents the women, the moon, completion and death, while yang, it's the symbol for men, the sun, creation, and birth. Okay? Then you have then the I Ching. Okay? So this is actually written, it's a poem about the book of change. Yun ang ibig sabihin ng I Ching. And it was written on a silk cloth. Then in terms of writing system, they have calligraphy. So you have brush calligraphy, which is very common in Chinese on Asian cultures. So for a very cultured, when you say cultured guys, yung mga pinag-aralan, may pinag-aralan sa kanila, you need to have the four characters. Ano ba yung four characters na yun? You need to have Shu, Hua, Qin, and Qi. So yan, so you need to write calligraphy very well. Kaya nga as early as 2 to 3 years old, pinagsusulat na yan. Then Hua, marunong ka dapat mag-paint. Then King, marunong ka mag-play ng musical instruments. And Chi, board game. Okay, so this is considered to be para masabing scholar ka. Then they have also what we call the oracle bone, which is made up of turtle's carapace. And if you notice here, there are some writings, early Chinese handwritings or calligraphy. And this is actually used to tell his future. Now, in terms of pottery, this is started off from Banpo. That's almost 5,000 years before Christ. And this was all handmade. And if you will notice here in the next slide, you will see that the evolution of their pottery. Okay, so this is around in Henan, around 3,500 BC. And then 1,000 years later, this is in Gonshu. Okay, so medyo nag-evolve na siya. Now, another of their contribution is the abacus or some sort of an ancient calculator. Now, take note that the calculator or the abacus is not limited only to China. Although iba ang tawag yan sa ibang lugar, pero the Japanese, the Romans, the Mesopotamians also have their own uh, version of the abacus. Okay? Then you have also the compass. Yan. Then they also have the crossbow. Sa China, meron ng crossbow, pero sa Western world, longbow pa yung ginagamit, yung original na pana. And at the same time, yung kanila is loaded na, kumbaga parang Armalite, sunod-sunod yung bala na. Hindi katulad dun sa Walking Dead na kada dalawa lang ang loading mo. To medyo maramihan to. Okay? Now, in terms of metallurgy, they also have metallurgy going back as far as the Zhao dynasty. Here, an ancient script showing them trying to smelt stone into metal, and then it's going to be forming now your different metalware, yung mga jars. Then here's another picture showing their ancient kites and kite tradition. Then they also have transport system called the junk. Okay? Ano yung pinagkaiba nito doon sa sasakyan ni Jack Sparrow? Yung kay Jack Sparrow pong tela lang. Sa kanila po ay meron pong kahoy na nakadikit sa sail para mas matibay yun. Although mas syempre mas malakas ang hatak yun. Pero yan, since meron siyang ribbing dun sa mismong sail mo, mas malakas, mas matibay yung iyong sail. Okay? Then they also have musical instruments. So if you're familiar with Korean and Japanese culture, you might be familiar also with some of those instruments. So you have here the erhu, the bow instruments. Parang yung version nila ng violin. Okay? The gehu, the gijik, then they have trumpets, flute, okay, signal pipe, oboe, okay, pipe pa rin siya, then panpipes, okay, then flute. Then here on the next slide, you will see there some of the common now, yung kumaga mas marami gumagamit ngayon. So you have here the guzheng. This can be seen also in Japan, also in Korea. Then you have the erhu din. So ito yung version nila ng gitara. Itong dalawa, Zhongruan. Then here's parang ano to? Yan. Parang version siya din ng guzheng, kaya lang mas malapad siya. Okay? Yan. Then, paper making. So, if I remember it correctly, pagdating sa paper making, guys, dalawa po yung sa civilization na gumawa. Yung sa Egyptian, which I described last time, and also the Chinese. Now, for the Chinese, it's a different style. Ang ginagawa nila sa Chinese is that they tend to mash the actual material, yung leaves, And by the way, this actually started 200 years before the uh, 300, almost 200 years before Christ, or 100 to 200 years before Christ. So, yan. So, if you will notice here, they have the materials being soaked in water. Yan. Tapos, minamash nila. And then, they try to dry it up. Then, what next one is pakukuluan nila yan para humalo po, para maging slurry. Okay? Then, what will happen is that they will remove some of the impurities and then ibababad nila sa water. Okay? Kailangan pino-pino na po yan para mas maganda yung paglapat niya dun sa tubig. Okay? Kasi po, gagamitan sila ngayon ng hulmahan. Okay? The material that they use to drain this is parang similar siya sa silk cloth. Yung sa silk screen, di ba maninipis yon. So, hahango lang sila ng tubig doon, aangat nila doon, kuha sila ng konting tubig, then iaangat nila, magde-drain out na yung water. Then, ilalagay nila ngayon siya sa patuyuan, okay? Once na matuyo na yan, madali na i-peel off yung papel. Kaya patong-patong na siya dito. Okay? So, yan, here. Okay? So, that's how they were able to um, do that. And that's the reason why it was actually made famous later on kasi dinadala nila yan for trade. Remember, may mga libro na nabibenta na as early as 200 years sa Silk Road. Okay? Then aside kung meron na kayong papel, siyempre magsusulat and para mas maraming napi-print yung mga libro, yan. We have here the wooden typeset. Okay? So, ang ginagamit nila diyan is they have letters already printed on a particular block of wood. So, yung dulo niyan is mga letra. So, kung kunyari gagawa ng sulat tas maramihan ng pagpi-print out, hahanapin nila yung characters na yan tas i-arrange siya nila dito sa isang panel. Then afterwards, lalagyan nila ng pintura yung mismong ibabaw nito, 'yan. And then ilalagay ngayon yung papel tapos gugulungan nila 'yan, okay. So that's how they are actually able to do the printing press. Okay, so this is actually showing them making the paper and then ito yung mismong, typeset letters nila. So you will notice it's actually showing now the different alphabets nila. Okay? Puwedeng isang word, isang character, then pagsasamahin na lang nila 'yan. Okay? Then here naman, ito yung sa spinner nila 'pag ginagamit nila sa pang-a-unwind ng silk cloth nila or ng silk thread. So silk, has been made around 4,000 years, so that's 2,000 years before Christ. So what would happen is that once na na-loosen na yung cocoon, ilalagay nila dito ta's hihilain nila yung isang hibla ta's papaikutin na nila 'yan diyan. Okay. Kaya mapapansin ninyo 'pag ginugol ninyo yung silk, cloth, okay, o yung silk thread, para siyang ano, um, 'yan, ito yung itsura niya, para siyang ganito na, okay. Ganito ang itsura niya kasi yung mismong, pinaggamitan ito 'tong mismong ito, nakaikot yun diyan. So tatanggalin nila dun sa pagkakapuwesto diyan tapos ita-tie na lang nila. Okay, kaya gano'n yung itsura 'pag ginugol ninyo yung silk, raw silk thread, okay, 'yan, oh, 'yan, okay. So 'yan po. Now another one is the invention of parang ano 'to, earthquake detector. Kanina ba nagising ba kayo kanina nung nag-earthquake o lalo na kayong hinele 'pag tulog? Meron ba nagising kanina, Mister Kagulada? Wala, mga natulog lang?
Sleep well po.
Sleep well?
Walang naramdaman, ma'am.
Pinaghele, lumindol pala, yes, Mister Quesada, lumindol. Ano ako may ginagawa ako nun dito nagja-jumping jack kunyari ako nun, eh, kaya hindi ko naramdaman. Sumasabay pala ako dun sa paglindol. Anyways, itong device na 'to is some sort of a, earthquake detector. Hindi niya din napi-pinpoint yung actual na lugar. But what it does is that it would actually show you where the direction of the earthquake. So kung yung direction ng earthquake nyo is horizontal or vertical, ito yung magsasabi to. So let's say horizontal yan. So if you're going to look in the cross section here, meron siya ditong mga hooks. Yan, nakikita niyo yung hooks na yan. So pag nagkaroon ng earthquake, itong metal na to, magsuswing ngayon siya. And by swinging that, it's actually gonna push this lever causing the dragons on the side, yung mga mouth dito, na mag-o-open. At 'pag nag-open 'yan, tutunog siyempre yung mga palaka sa baba, telling yung direksyon na pinaghulugan, kung saan yung direction ng earthquake, okay? Although when I checked it out, yung mga write-ups nila about this, hindi naman niya sinabi na earthquake detector, parang ano lang siya, validator lang nung earthquake. Okay. So, hindi niya nape-predict yung earthquake, parang nava-validate niya na ang direction ng earthquake is from this location or from this side ng ano, ganyan. Okay. So, yan. Now, ito yung mismong sa Silk Road, guys. So, this is actually the trading route from China. It goes to part of Tibet. Yan. Okay. Himalayan Mountains. Uh, Passing by India. Okay. And then Samarkand is still part of then Afghanistan, Uzbekistan. Now, then afterwards, magte-trade na yan papunta na sa Europe. Okay, and that is how they were able to showcase some of their trades. Usually, limited yung mga pinapakita nila. Remember, there are things that hindi nila nilalabas. Kung ano lang gusto nila ipatrade sa labas. Okay? Kasi may times sa yung China, medyo, hanggang ngayon pa rin naman hindi nila nilalabas lahat ng information nila. Okay? Then you have here the compass. Yan. And then here, to stirrup. This is a stirrup. This is a device that is used for horse riders. Tatapakan nila yan para makapanik dun sa kabayo. Okay? Then you have here parasol. Okay, hindi siya yung katulad na umbrella natin. The difference within the parasol is ano siya, hindi siya katulad ng umbrella na ilang piraso yon na na rib umbrella. Ito, dalawa lang yan. It's either pambukas sa sara lang siya. Hindi na fold unlike the umbrella that we're using right now. Yung atin ngayon is the collapsible parasol. Then this is actually going as far as 21 years after the death of Christ. And they can actually see this. It's actually spread all over Asia, particularly in Japan and also in Korea. Okay? Sa Japan, ginagamit 'to sa mga temples. Okay? Then, ito, pinauso nila to paper money. Okay? Remember, instead of using ingots, yung mga gold coins na maliliit, yan ang dinadala nila kasi po, para mas madali silang makabitbit ng goods. Madali siyang itago, mas marami kang maitatago. Unlike yung ingots, yung mismong gold bars or gold coins nila na maliliit or gold boat na tinatawag, 'pag makikipag-trade ka magbibitbit ka niyan at napakabigat niyan, guys. Sana kung marami kang dala at mas madali kang makita na may dala kang marami niyan kasi box by box ang bitbit ng mga tao ng ingots. So by using paper money, they were able to trade easier. Okay, so they were the first one to establish the paper currency. And then also the tea ceremony. Okay, so this was actually result of uh, in order to find eternal life, so they chewed a lot of leaves, and merong isang leaf doon na kung saan it was somehow able to give them energy. Yeah. Okay, so that is for the for the Chinese civilization. So let me just go to the Mesopotamian. Ay, sorry, not Mesopotamian, ano ba yan? The Mesoamerican rather. Okay. So for the Mesoamerican, wait lang guys. Yan. So there are actually four civilizations under the Mesoamerican. You have the Olmec, the Maya, the Aztec, and the Inca. Okay. So the oldest was the Olmec civilization. Okay. So this is actually the region in Mexico where the three, tatlo lang, na Mesoamericans na nag-establish. So you only have the Olmec, the Mayan, and then also the Aztec. Dito naman yung Aztec, okay? So yeah, now take note that this is in Central America and it's in a tropical rainforest. And usually in tropical rainforest, guys, mas madaling lumaki or mabilis mag-grow yung mga halaman dyan because marami siyang supply ng water. Okay? So the oldest was the Olmec civilization which just started here. Okay? And it's actually started as early as um, 1500 BCE to 100 BCE. Okay? So yan. Now, it's actually in the Veracruz and Tabasco in Mexico. Yan. Um, the Olmecs were also able to come up with infrastructures. They also have their own pyramids. Although as I mentioned, since sila yung pinakamatandang civilization sa Mesoamerica, some of the pyramids that they have may have been engulfed by the forest. Okay? But definitely they have large structures that they built also. Then you have also mga stone heads. Okay? Yan. Huwag niyo na tignan kung sino kamukha niyan. Then you also have, yan. So here are more examples of their infrastructure. Ito na lang yung natira nila. Yan. They also believe in gods, particularly the jaguar god. Okay, so here's an example of another stone head. Ito yung sa jaguar god nila. Okay, so the jaguar god is actually a mixture of half human, half man. And they are so powerful that it can actually bring rain. Kaya nga, ang ginagawa nila para makas nila yung gods nila, they dress up as the god and they do the rain dance. Okay? Yan. Now, they also build floating farms. They also, now since they're doing floating farms, they also were able to mobilize their infrastructure from one part to another. Remember, they're lying in the Gulf of Mexico. So maraming water dun sa area na yon. Okay. Now, they also have a writing system. Unfortunately, because of there were no translations available, they don't have the exact meaning of these writings. Okay? Pero the writing system is an indication of their being a civilization, a highly civilized group of people. Okay, the next one is the Mayans. Okay? So the Mayan civilization, yeah, those are examples of their designs. Okay? Ito naman is actually here in this particular region. Okay, so this is actually about 3,000 years ago when they started clearing some part of Mexico and Central America. They were able to clear the jungle and they were able to acquire as much as 12,000 miles. Okay, and the population size soared about 10 million people. Okay, so here is an example probable Mayan temple building. Okay. And since they have mountain areas, they were on terrace farmings. Okay. So yung mga matutubig na lugar, tinatanggal nila yung water, dinidrain nila yung water to create farmland. And then for mountains, yes, Miss Pinka. Sherry Ann, you're raising your hand. Ah, okay. Okay, so yan. So they have step farming. So hindi lang po sa rice terraces, meron din sa Mexico. Then they have
Wala
also,
pong rapla po.
okay. So they have also infrastructure, city builders. Okay, so they have pyramids made of limestone block. Yan. And on top of the pyramids, they have their temples. So if you will notice, medyo yung iba mababa. Meron din silang matataas na temples. Okay? So usually they have priests, and this is the most important people, and usually the priest can talk to their gods for it to rain. Okay? So pag natutuwa yung God sa kanila, they would give them rain and abundance of crops. Okay? Now, although they don't have an exact writing compared to the Olmec, but they have pictographs or here hieroglyphs, as you can see here. Okay, so they have writings on the walls to tell them about their culture. So ito yung mga characteristics nila. They have the writing system, they have art, architecture, mathematics, calendar, and astronomical system. So they have what we call the Mayan calendar. Okay. So this is their daily work. So they have fishing, since meron silang malapit na body of water. Then they also have farming. Okay, so their mountain, their pyramids, mga bahay nila sa paligid. Okay, now in terms of their culture, um, hindi sila isang buong state, but they're actually a group of unified unified group that has a common background. Kaya sila nag-considered as a nation. Now, aside from that one, they also have their own definition of beauty. So, yung definition nila ng beauty, unang-una is, kailangan malapad ang kanilang noo. Okay? So, kailangan po yun. So, it's their definition of beauty. So, as early as babies, they try to press the forehead downwards. Kaya medyo flatten yung mga forehead nila. Yan. Okay? So, giving them a sloped forehead. Another term of beauty for them is the cross eye. So, naglalagay sila ng bagay sa harapan ng kanilang noo for them to practice being cross eye. And then, piranha teeth. So, pointy teeth is attracted for them. So, medyo kinikikil nila yan para maging matulis. Okay? Now, I'm not gonna go into their religion anymore, but in terms of their art, okay, so they have their own ways on how to present themselves in wood, in clay, in stucco, and also in terracotta for figurines. So, in terms of drawing, ito yung kanilang drawings or painting sa walls. Parang drawing ng bata, eh. Pero nakita mo may mga kwintas, may mga hikaw, tas yung mga buhok nila, yan. Ito naman, another showing, yan, yung way of life nila. Okay? Then for stucco models, ito yung naka-carve na nila. Yan. Ayan o. Usually adorn their temples with this kind of design. And then here is a figurehead. Okay. So wood carving naman nila. Yan. Okay. Or clay carving. And then, why did the Mayans decline? Some people believe that there was a climate change during that time, and then also, um, because of the climate change, their farmland was not good for tilling anymore. They cannot farm or plant crops anymore. That's why they have to move out. Now, since numinipis na yung mga tao dun sa lugar na yun, it's now easy for them to be conquered by the Spaniards. Then you have now the Aztecs, the third one. Now the Aztecs is usually existed around 1300 to 1520, and it's actually in the present day Mexico, west of Mexico, and then the city is called Tenochtitlan. Okay, okay, so yeah. Now, one of the characteristics of the Aztec is that they are usually hunters and gatherers. They do fishing as well. Um, because of that one, they tend to conquer other people or other location or other tribes. And then they also have specialized workers. They also have jewelry makers. And so yeah. So if you will notice here, although this is a, a couple, I forget the movie. Apocalypto. Yan, yung palabas na yon. Okay, they showing the Aztecs religion, or the Aztecs way of life. So they were actually more on warriors. Okay. So mabilis sila matumakbo. They were able to capture the enemies. And this is actually this time when they have the first basketball. Yung first basketball, guys, is actually not the ball that they're using right now, nagawa sa goma. It's actually from the head of their enemies. Okay? They would, play with the head, shoot nila yun parang sa actually parang katulad ng traditional na basketball, nagsu-shoot sila sa hoop, 'yan. So here's an artist rendition of their city and more of their warriors, 'yan. Now take note that the Aztecs are sun worshippers. So they were actually, they believe that if the sun was not in their favor, 'pag nawala yung sun, Diyos ko, nagkakagulo na sila, okay? 'Yan. And one of the famous rulers of Aztec is Montezuma. Okay. And then the last one is the Inca civilization. Okay, wait lang guys ha. Okay guys, you can still see my screen, right? Nakikita po ba?
Yes po.
Okay. So yeah. So it's actually located, or the Inca civilization actually occupied Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, Argentina, and Chile. So ito yung mismong actual area nila, and it's actually considered as the land of the four quarters. Okay? Wait lang ha. Bumibitaw yung isang program ko. Ayan. Okay, so this is considered as the land of the four quarters. Ayan. Okay, so here you can see there the actual city of Machu Picchu, which is the center. Ano nangyayari ba? Ba't nagagalaw? Wait lang guys ha. Okay. So usually, this is following what we call a communism form of government. Why communism? Because what is happening here is that the farmers tend to produce the products, and then they would surrender it to the government, and the government will give them or provide them the services. Okay? Kumbaga parang kinokontrol maigi nung, ay nako, wait lang nga. Okay. So yeah. So aside from being a communism form of government, they actually were able to plant vegetation, particularly in the valley region. Wherein for the valleys they have corn, beans, cotton, squash, and in the mountains they grow potatoes and herds of llamas and alpacas for meat and wool. Okay, sa pagdamit. So they were able to come up with the different regions or different cities nila, and then wait lang guys.